A man who has learned to be alone is a man who has learned to be free. In the noise of society, people often mistake solitude for loneliness. They see a man without a partner and assume lack. But they do not see what is forming in silence. They do not understand that the longer a man walks alone, truly alone, not in bitterness or retreat, but in mastery, the more powerful he becomes. Because solitude, chosen and endured, is the furnace where self-respect, discipline, and clarity are forged. In the Stoic tradition, we do not chase attachments to escape ourselves. We refine the self until we are complete with or without them. The man who spends time single, not out of failure but out of intention, begins to uncover what few ever do, who he really is without distraction, without compromise, without illusion. Let me give you 5 truths about what happens to a man who stays single long enough to understand himself. A man who spends time alone and embraces his solitude begins to separate his emotional well-being from the approval or presence of others. He no longer depends on someone else to make him feel worthy, happy, or stable. Instead, he begins to cultivate a deeper, more resilient form of peace, one that does not come and go based on another person's mood, attention, or absence. In solitude, he faces the parts of himself that many try to avoid through constant company. And in facing them, he becomes emotionally self-sufficient. This kind of strength is not loud or dramatic. It shows up in his calm responses, his lack of neediness, his ability to stand firm even when others walk away. He has learned how to sit with discomfort, how to process his own thoughts, how to observe emotion without being ruled by it. He does not run from pain or chase pleasure. He lets both pass through him like wind through a mountain. Younger or less experienced men often attach their identity to relationships, using affection or validation to fill internal gaps. But the man who has sat with himself long enough finds that he is enough without constant affirmation. That doesn't mean he doesn't value love or connection. It means he doesn't need them to feel whole. From a Stoic perspective, this is a man who has begun to master himself. He is not reactive. He is not desperate. His happiness is not for sale, because it is not dependent on anything outside of his control. And that kind of emotional independence is not just rare, it's deeply attractive. People can feel it. They sense that he is centered, unmoved, and grounded in something deeper than external praise. That is the power of emotional self-sufficiency. It cannot be faked, and it cannot be taken away. A man who remains single long enough begins to see through illusion. He no longer falls for appearances, empty words, or temporary emotions. He has learned that peace is more valuable than attention, and that not every connection is worth his energy. Over time, this clarity forms the foundation of higher standards, not out of arrogance but from experience and self-respect. He no longer accepts what merely looks good on the surface. He wants what aligns with depth, values, and peace of mind. When a man is alone, he has the time to observe without distraction. He watches how people treat each other, how quickly many rush into relationships to escape their own emptiness, and how often that leads to drama, confusion, and pain. In contrast, he becomes more selective. He realizes that it is better to walk alone with dignity than to share space with someone who brings chaos. This is a man who doesn't fear silence because he knows the cost of noise. His standards rise because his sense of self rises. High standards don't mean perfection is expected. They mean he values emotional maturity, honesty, loyalty, and a shared sense of direction. He will not tolerate manipulation, games, or disrespect. He does not chase love, he evaluates it. And if it does not meet the values he has built within himself, he lets it pass. From a Stoic perspective, this man seeks virtue, not pleasure. He would rather endure solitude than compromise his principles. His solitude sharpens his discernment, and in that clarity he becomes immune to superficial charm. He is not bitter. He is focused. He is not cold. He is aware. And his high standards are not walls, but gates that guard a life he has built with discipline and intention. Only the Stoicism worthy are allowed in. When a man spends extended time in solitude, He begins to understand the value of his time in a way that most never do. Without constant distractions, he sees clearly how much of life is wasted on things that do not matter. Idle conversation, shallow pursuits, endless scrolling, or people who drain more than they give. In that clarity, he begins to guard his time as if it were a sacred resource, because he realizes it is the one thing he can never get back. This awareness brings a shift in how he moves. He no longer says yes to everything. He is no longer afraid of missing out because he knows what truly matters. His days are filled with purpose, whether that means focused work, personal growth, deep thought, or silence. He doesn't fear being alone with his thoughts because he has made peace with them. This makes his presence more powerful. When he does choose to spend time with someone, it is a deliberate act, not a distraction from boredom. Others begin to sense this difference. He is not rushed. He is not constantly available. He responds with intention, not impulse. And this naturally raises his value in the eyes of those around him. People begin to respect the boundaries he keeps, because they see he respects himself enough to keep them. His time becomes a reflection of his discipline, and his energy becomes more focused, more refined. In the eyes of the Stoics, time is a form of currency more valuable than gold. The man who gives it away freely is poor in spirit, but the man who guards it wisely becomes rich in peace, clarity, and strength. The longer he is single, the more he realizes that how he spends his time is how he spends his life, and he refuses to waste it. A man who remains single for an extended time begins to see that life is not about filling a void. It is about fulfilling a purpose. When there is no one to impress, no relationship to lean on for identity, he is left with himself. And in that quiet space, he starts asking deeper questions. What am I here to do? What legacy will I leave behind? What kind of man do I want to become? These questions take root, and over time, they begin to shape how he lives. He stops looking for someone to complete him because he begins to realize he is not incomplete. Instead of seeking validation through love or attention, he builds a life that reflects his values. He sharpens his skills, disciplines his habits, and focuses on his path. His mornings are no longer dictated by emotional highs or lows. His time is structured around goals, routines, and meaningful work. He becomes driven not by desire for others but by duty to himself. This transformation makes him powerful, not in the loud or boastful sense, but in the Stoic sense, rooted, focused, and resilient. He is not easily swayed by distraction because his heart is anchored in something deeper than momentary feelings, and because he no longer chases external validation, he becomes immune to manipulation. He creates, he builds, and he leads, not to be seen but because it is in his nature to do so. From a Stoic lens, this is the mark of a free man. He lives according to reason, guided by virtue, unaffected by noise. The longer he is single, the clearer his mission becomes. And when love eventually comes, if it comes, it is not needed. It is chosen, because he has already made peace with his purpose. The man who has spent significant time alone, shaping himself in silence and clarity, often becomes a mirror that unsettles others. He is not trying to impress, not seeking approval, and not bending his character to fit in. His presence alone reflects strength, discipline, and inner peace, qualities that make those who are not aligned with such traits feel exposed. The longer he is single, the more refined his standards and energy become, and those who rely on surface-level charm or attention-seeking behavior will find no foothold with him. He does not respond to manipulation, nor does he react emotionally to pressure. He is seen through the games, the masks, the noise of superficial connections. He remains calm when tested, silent when provoked, and firm when boundaries are pushed. That kind of composure is intimidating to those who are used to control through chaos or seduction. It forces others to confront the difference between attraction and alignment, between temporary attention and true worth. To many, especially those who are not prepared for depth or accountability, this man feels unreachable. Not because he is cold, but because he is clear. not because he is harsh, but because he is whole. He cannot be rushed and he cannot be deceived. His self-respect disarms manipulation, and his clarity reveals the motives of those who approach him with masks. From a Stoic view, this man is not feared because of aggression but because of the power of restraint. He does not need to dominate anyone. His mere refusal to be moved by the unworthy is power enough. The longer he walks alone, the more difficult it becomes for anything shallow to stand beside him. For he has become not just selective, but sovereign, answering only to his values and the voice within.